Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the weekend review edition of Celtic Down Under, hosted by myself, Sean, joined by Paul and Anthony again from West Australia this week. How you going, guys? Do you want to? Is your current mood reflected by things Celtic or anything else going on? Paul?
Uh, well, I had a pretty good weekend up until last night, and
Mm.
then I think we all know the wheels came off at that point. So, and then Mondays are Mondays, aren't they? So Mondays are always not your favourite day of the week, and especially not after a performance and result like that. So, yeah, mood has definitely been managed by what went on yesterday.
Anthony?
Yeah, much the same. Obviously, Spain beating England in the Women's World Cup final, so that was like a wee yes moment. And I think, all right, now for Celtic to
Palestina.
do the business, and unfortunately, they're the ones that burst the croup this week. So yeah, it's not a bit of a slow, ponderous day at work, but that kind of echoes what I saw on the park last night.
I did enjoy that picture of the Spain player giving the English player the finger. Not literally, but like raising her middle finger. Nothing in the changing rooms or anything like that. Yeah, it was a
I was going to say
good
that's
game.
near the knuckle, but that's probably in bad taste as well.
Yeah, both terrible jokes. Uh, okay, so and just before we get into this kind of post mortem, anything else worth mentioning? Ange beat Man United. Cool. It's good to see our ex doing well with her new boyfriend. Anything else?
Oh, Australia unfortunately ended up finishing fourth, so they got beat by Sweden, who sort of, I think, quite comfortably took care of Australia in the end. I think the Matildas looked a bit tired. I think usually that third versus fourth playoff, you usually see a bit of squad rotation, but Tony Gustafsson sort of picked the same team again. So I was a bit surprised by that. So I think the Matildas going forward are going to have to look at the depth of squad if they're going to progress deeper into tournaments. The Olympics obviously coming up next year. So that's definitely something I think they're going to have a look at, because you can't go to the same 12, 13 players hoping to get through a tournament, I don't think. But that's not to dismiss or take away anything from the fact that they had a wonderful tournament, and finishing fourth is a tremendous achievement and has raised the profile of football and women's sport in this country 100-fold easily. So, it's been great, but with the critical hat on, there's definitely some room for improvement as well if they want to take the next step. But yeah, it's been great. It's been, talking about women's football for the last couple of weeks now, so it's been fantastic. So hopefully that, like I say, leads to bigger and better things in the coming, next 5-10 years.
Yep, and hopefully it's a proof of concept that we can maybe get the men's World Cup out here too, but we'll see. Stuff like the problem with Dockers and Eagles playing is we won't get up to stadium for Perth and all that sort. But yeah, who knows? Yeah, that's what it is. We've got Rugby World Cup coming up in a few years. That'll be interesting as well. Let's get down to business. The fun part. Paul, what happened at Rugby Park on Sunday night for us, afternoon in Scotland?
Where'd you start? We never really. I don't think we did start. We it was. Let's talk about the lineup. I think given the players we had missing, from players that have left the club, players that are injured, it was probably roughly how I expected to see the lineup. It was a toss-up between Home or Turnbull again, or Iwata in midfield alongside Kilmarnock and O'Reilly. But really, that and maybe Burnaby, does he get a game ahead of Taylor? To me, they're the only sort of positions that were up for debate after what happened to, Stephen Welsh signs a 4-year extension, and then the very next day in training is out for 2 months. You couldn't write it. And so look, from a selection point of view, I didn't have too many criticisms, but you knew going there it was going to be a difficult game. When you got players missing, that's going to make it harder. My biggest grievance was we didn't look up for it. They wanted it more than us, and that, because Well, what do we all say? If you win your battles first and then you get the right to play football, we've got more talented players. That team we put out are better footballers than Kilmarnock have got like for like. But they wanted it more. They were well structured. McInnes had them well set up, and they executed a plan. And we were kind of too. We ran out of ideas, and I'm not sure how many we had at the beginning, but we completely ran out of ideas. Weirdly enough, first half we started slowly again. They had a couple of chances, but we didn't carve out a lot, but we carved out 2 or 3 chances. And if we take one of them, you probably do go in and win the game. But we didn't. And the longer it went on, the less likely I thought we were going to get anything. And then we're scrambling around hoping for a decision off a ref that we were never going to get a decision off at the end. And, we'll cover that in a bit. But when you desperate stuff, if that's what you're hoping for to try and stay alive in a cup tie. So we'll pick through the bones of it, but not a lot.
Yeah, in regards to the wanted it more thing, I get what you're saying, but I never really give that as much credit as other people do. Like I feel the whole wanted more thing is maybe like maybe have about 5% bearing on the actual outcome of a game, right? There's just so many other things that are more important. I think
we're second
more bearing.
Well, it's the same pitch for both teams, right? We want to pass it more than they do.
One team's used to it, and one team doesn't want to play football. One team doesn't have the ball. Their manager said post-match, we're Celtic are possession-based team. We did all our work out of possession, so they don't care what the ball does in the pitch. They're actively saying aloud, "We are our football. We're playing the game out of possession." That's what their
But
game
you've got to
plan
win
is.
your individual battles, and we weren't. We were second to pretty much everything. When we did have it, we did. When we did have it, we didn't do anything with it, right?
I'm not saying it doesn't have an effect. I'm just saying I think people overweight it. Is what I'm saying.
Possibly, but like at the end of the day, if like there's multiple times where it's 60-40 in our favor or 50-50, and we don't win it. We don't win it. The other player wins it. Why? Because there's more desire, there's more energy, there's more intensity. And there was a lot of that yesterday. And then we were pretty aimless when we did have the ball. But like second half, we were reduced to pumping in crosses from deep that were, they've got a big, massive defense. And we've got little guys up there. Well, it's just daft. Like, move them around, try and get in behind, use the ball quicker. Players making better runs. It was pedestrian. It was actually boring. I was actually getting bored. It was late night here. It was midnight when we finished, and I nearly nodded off. If it wasn't for the fact it was kind of tense, I probably would have. It was really dire stuff.
Yeah, Anthony.
Well, to start off with, I actually had a really hard time actually physically watching it because the glare off that plastic monstrosity.
What the hell? And the two pictures.
Then you had the hoops versus that they're white and blue. So, all right, they're different color shorts and socks, okay, but the fact that Kilmarnock's tops are white at the back, I had a really hard time zeroing in on who was who and who was going for the ball. And to be honest, that took me about 10 minutes. So even then, I was like, that was a hard thing to sort of why we didn't wear the black strip. We're the away team. Why we didn't wear an away kit, I do not know. But for me, I was having a hard time watching it. So God knows the players on the park. But that's the first thing. Second thing is, I just had a hard issue just with the fact that I felt we didn't really have a strategy or a game plan or our tactics just didn't seem to exist. Kilmarnock set a stall out early, man marking, a lot of energy, harassing, as you said, Sean, working off the ball. And usually what happens is teams like that blow a gasket somewhere within 90 minutes. They can't keep that up for 90 minutes. And unfortunately, they score their goal probably round about the time that they start blowing a gasket. And that just gives them that extra 10% just to dig in a bit more with something to hold on to. And unfortunately, the writing's on the wall probably before that anyway, in my mind. But the thing for me is, and this is a criticism of Rodgers' teams in years gone by, and when Celtic were, that third season with Rodgers where things weren't going great, the hallmark for me is when the two centre-halves are just playing square passes side to side, and there's absolutely no movement in front of them, so it's not a criticism of them per se. But when I see that, I think we're in trouble. we don't have, if Calmack's getting marked out the game and he's not given that easy option in the middle there, and your two fullbacks are not having great games. Greg Taylor again, we're saying last week it was 2 points on a graph. It's now 3 points, so it starts becoming a pattern. I just look at that and go, oh no, we're not up for this. We're in trouble here. And Lagerbielke, fair play to the guy. I don't know if I mispronounced his name there, but fair play to the guy. He's just has to come in out just first game. He's probably had maybe one training session, maybe 2 training sessions with the team. He's defended all right, but he's trying to play these long balls over the top. As Paul says, we're quite a small team. Kilmarnock, quite a big team, so that was never going to work. They're hard passes to play. He couldn't really do it. And the thing for me was he was really struggling to hit the 10-yard past the feet. The number of times he sprayed it wide to Kyogo, and poor Kyogo, he's coming deeper and deeper and deeper just to try and get involved in the game. So that for me, when you've got 2 centre halves having to start the attack, that's a problem, particularly when one is it's his first game, and the other guy in Narostia, who I don't think had a bad game either. He was all right. But again, they're still finding their feet. And for some reason, they're the ones that are trying to start a play. And it's that to me just has alarm bells written all over it. And then, like I said, it's all huff and puff at the end when they score, and there's a bit of urgency and the subs come on. And that's probably my last point of criticism, is that we didn't have a recognised striker on the bench to bring someone on to maybe change the game or go 2 up top. And I felt Maeda, we could have replaced him at any point in that game, and we had no one to replace him with. So there's depth of squad issues there as well. I know we're at injuries and we'll touch on that, but for me, there's just multiple facets there to that performance. So it's not any one thing, but you just layer upon layer upon layer. It led to that, and it was a turgid watch. I mean, it was bad. I mean, that's probably one of the worst Celtic forms I've seen in years. So all right, it's on the plastic park, and that slows the passage of play down, but there was just that lack of urgency in general. Whether the ball's zipping around or not, you can still appear to be busier than what we appeared to be, and there was just too many passengers and too many players not willing to take a bit of responsibility and try to make a mark on the game for me.
Yeah, the pitch was when they did the Viaplay interview with Rodgers after the match, they went, the question was, what makes it difficult? What is it difficult about coming down to a different place to visit? And it didn't even the guy hadn't even finished his question. He's the pitch. Do you mean the guy didn't even get a beat before he answered the question, say the pitch, and then maybe a couple. He kind of realizes how quickly and how vociferously he's answered, and he goes, and he kind of backtracks a little bit, going, "Oh, but we should have dealt with it better." Da, da, da. But it was part of the pain watching this was just every time we try to pass, and the players are just slipping over everywhere. So you're talking about Paul, when you were saying earlier about winning 50-50s. Well, win 50-50s, that's important. But then is that more important than you're one pass away from creating a chance and goal, and your guy slips? Do you know what I mean? That to me, that's a bigger impact on the game is the pitch than the Kilmarnock being up for the battle. I get it's all these things. It's no one thing, right? There's 4, 5, 6 things, and our poor performance was one of those things. Our injuries is another one of those things. But
it's a perfect storm, right?
Yeah,
it's a perfect storm. Bunch of injuries, not yet signings in. New team, new manager, transitioning system, shit pitch, brand new players don't know each other, and we're off it, and they're on a bit of form.
Yeah,
it's not to make excuses, but any one or two of those things aren't in the pot, and we probably get away with it.
Yeah,
but it was just one of those days. Now the concern is it? Anthony's point is that some players are looking like a trend. For me, the lack of any kind of clear tactics and shape is my biggest concern. Any team can have a bad day at the office. But Carl looks lost, and I can't try to work out what. I think part of it is he's not got enough people. He's been targeted for a start, and he hasn't got enough support in there. So the fullbacks, I don't know what the fullbacks are doing. They're not overlapping. They're not really inverting. So he's isolated. He hasn't got the same angles he was getting last season, and his other two mates in midfield are too far away from him. He either needs the fullbacks to invert again, or he needs a double pivot in beside him.
The fullbacks are inverting. They're just not inverting. Overlapping. They're just not overlapping well. And their crosses are like going nowhere.
I don't think they're even over. Like, I don't think they're getting up and down. I don't see them getting up and down. Like, our widest players are our wingers. Like, I don't see them doing.
Taylor and Ralston were hitting the byline. The ball was going nowhere, right? Like,
but we never really I don't feel we got to the byline enough. I feel that was one of our biggest issues, was that we weren't.
The two or three times we got to the byline, we looked dangerous. Like that bit of play in the first half when Maeda knocks it into O'Reilly. O'Reilly slides home in, and but
that's not the byline. That's their channel. That's a channel pass, and it's the same where Haksabanovic goes in there twice. Yeah, but I mean, it's different from going round as a fullback as it is from going through that channel. But you're right, though. That's the channel where we get our success, and we just couldn't do it yesterday, right? Because the chance early in the we where Holm squares it for Kyogo, who's just like a yard behind it.
About. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
In the first half, and that's the channel. And then even in the second half, we had Haksabanovic got in there a couple of times when he came on, and Maeda, that's not Maeda's game. He doesn't get in that channel, right? It's like, well, yeah.
But we didn't see. I guess what I'm saying is we didn't see the fullbacks in there very, get into the byline or either inside or outside. Like,
I think Ralston maybe got one or two, maybe, but I don't remember Greg Taylor really getting forward much.
It was more
wrong, but
it was more after the subs. It wasn't really before that. It was more after the subs.
And they decided just to defend their box by that point. Like they were, to Anthony's point, they were probably starting to feel it by then. And they've got the lead and they've got something to hang on to. So they were quite happy to drop quite deep and just defend the box, defend their final third. And we didn't have enough. Like you look at the bench, that's when obviously we're stretched, right? But you look at the bench and you go, there's nobody there that I've got any expectation can turn the match in our favour. Like literally you're either looking for DT to hit a worldie from somewhere or Haksabanovic is going to try and get you a penalty, which is exactly what he tried to do. Mm-hmm. They're about Yang looked lively. Like he was one of the few that probably got pass marks in the day. And nearly got his goal. Obviously, there was a slight deflection on that one out for a corner, but he looked like he was, he might bring a spark, but really he was one of the very few. And on that performance, you would be making an argument for, he'd be putting his hand up for a start in the next game.
Yeah, you could say the same about, that was why Holm got his start, because he did well when he came on last week. And you could say the same for Haksabanovic, but how many times have we seen this story with Haksabanovic where he looks good off the bench and then stinking the next game he starts?
I didn't even think he looked that good off the bench, to be honest.
Well, that's why I want to sort of touch back on Holm getting selected and
go for it.
And McGregor, but I think McGregor needs some help in there. I think that's the issue. And I think last season he had a Tatty beside him who's he's a workhorse and he gets up and down and all around and puts a lot of running in. And I don't think you get that from a David Turnbull. And then obviously Holm was preferred to Iwata. So Iwata obviously played right back during the preseason and hasn't featured in any of the games as far as I'm aware. I can't remember him coming off the bench for any appearances yet. So he's obviously not fancied as another central midfielder, but I kind of think that if we are struggling, if this is going to become a thing, then maybe you go back to someone who can pass the ball, someone who's strong, have a bit of extra presence in there to give you that double pivot so that you're taking a bit of pressure off Callum McGregor. You're giving the centre halves another option to hit, because the one thing Iwata does is he keeps the ball pretty well, maybe offensively not going forward quite as much, but possession, and isn't that the sort of emblem of a Rodgers team, is keeping possession and retaining possession and winning the ball back. So obviously they went with Holm. I don't think he was bad. I think the thing he was guilty of the most was wanting too much time on the ball. Every time he got the ball, I think he always wanted an extra touch, or he took an extra touch, and he was never going to get it on that park. He was never going to get it with the Kilmarnock players around him, putting him under a lot of pressure. And that was probably just a bit of an eye-opener for him to sort of say, this is what life's like in Scotland, because that were just breathing down his neck. And that was the one time where he broke forward, and it was a good move. And all he had to do was just put Kyogo through, and he just took another couple of touches, and it all broke down. And that for me was probably the biggest criticism of his game. He went missing for about 20 minutes in the first half as well. Greg Taylor, just that left side, there was just no real option. It was either down the line to Maeda or it was out the park, basically. And that was, or turn around, pass it back to the centre half, fart about with it for a couple of minutes, and then, just this turgid, slow, ponderous build-up, which, like I said, usually ends up going nowhere or resulted in this hopeful long ball, which, we're not known for and isn't really going to work. So I think that was, I think, maybe Iwata needs to come back into the reckoning, but, obviously Brendan Rodgers has seen something at training that's keeping him out. I think if we've got, out of the options we've got, I think O'Reilly at the top of the spear or the number 10 makes sense, but I think Cal needs a bit of backup in there. And hopefully he can turn his form around a little bit, because, like I said, he's not exactly started the season at his usual level. He always sets a very high standard, but he's been a little bit below par so far in the season so far.
Yeah, agreed. I don't know, man. Like, it's home. I think after the thing he posted on Instagram last week, they'll sit down, be humble. I'd say that's come back to bite him quite strongly. He just couldn't stand up to a team of men, essentially, right? When you look at those Kilmarnock players on the pitch and coming off the bench, they're all just absolutely, they've been in the gym. You know what I mean? Like, it's like the Monstars versus Space Jam, looking at the kind of physicality. It's got me worried for Ibrox in a sense, because we looked physically, as you kind of almost touched on earlier, we were talking about Paul being up for the battle, but we're also just physically outmatched as well. And a lot of that comes down to the referee just kind of allowing it to happen. Like, what's his name? Armstrong, who's a brilliant player, one of the best players outside of Celtic and Rangers. And he just elbows Greg Taylor in the head, nothing. Right? He barges Joe Hart off the ball, nothing. Look, the amount of fouls that guy committed, and he didn't get a yellow card at all in the game. Whereas Anthony Ralston gets a yellow card for a fair challenge that didn't hit the guy at all. Like, it was just a normal 50-50
jump for a header and his shoulder bounced off him and he got both for it. And you're right. Like, I thought VAR was there to pick up serious foul play. I can't understand how an elbow to the head that draws blood isn't considered a serious foul play. And to add insult to injury, he's the one that's off the pitch when the ball comes down his channel and we're one man short. That said, and we will might as well get into the goal, because there only was one. So there is insult to injury, because it comes down. It's initially comes down Ralston's side first, but even earlier than that, it comes from our own throw in. And this is one of the things that's worried me in the first few games, or worried is probably a stretch, but we don't look great from set pieces and corners and free kicks. We go up and down in that, but we've never really scored a lot of goals from those from those positions. But now we can't even retain possession off throw-ins. Like, aimless throw-in, goes up and it becomes a 50-50. It breaks again. They're first to it. They put Marley Watkins in the channel and he's away. Ralston looks like he's treading water. He's right in the channel. Then the ball sort of recycled across. So it makes its way all the way across the box, past 3 or 4 players. Gets picked up by Armstrong on the other side. Taylor's not there. So Maeda's trying to shepherd him. He doesn't do a good enough job, and there's not enough pressure on the ball. And what is a pretty routine square ball across the ball. Like, we took the piss out of Rangers the other week because of how badly they defended the goal that they lost against Kilmarnock. This is not much better. It's not even moving very quickly. It just goes past everyone. No defender takes any responsibility. Ralston's ball watching and lets Marley Watkins run off him. And the 2 centre backs, who I don't hold a lot of blame for, how I thought they played okay considering they met each other the day before. But neither of them takes any responsibility there. And I know that your ball coming across your box like that, you're concerned about, potentially knocking it into your own net. but you've got to decide to do something. You can't just hope, like leave it and hope for the best. And it's a pretty straightforward. And Hart's completely exposed, and he's got no chance. And it's a pretty straightforward finish. We can talk about VAR and offside. I have no idea what bits were being
please allow me before.
On.
Let me get touch on the throw-ins first. So I totally agree with you on the throw-ins, right? There was one in the first half. It would have been Ralston on the right. And he was standing there. I don't know, maybe 15, 20 seconds had gone. In the camera shot, opposite side of the pitch, right? So it's the wide shot. And there's only one Celtic player in the camera shot that's an option. And there's 3 Kilmarnock players. I coach Sunday League. I'd be going nuts in my team if there's only one option from a throw-in. I literally coach them at least 3 options at every throw-in, even if one of them's like back to the centre-back. You know, if one of my centre-backs is standing there and not being an option for a full-back with a throw-in, I go nuts at him. Like, be an option. He's probably not going to give you, but at least be an option. And there was nothing in this camera shot, and I was going nuts about it. But yeah, you're right. Throw-ins, it's an issue. Goal kicks was an issue last week. We seem to have done something about it, but it's not quite there yet. Hard to tell on that pitch. As for the goal, the VAR, it was, to me, I don't know how that's not given us offside. And let's just, when you look at the picture, there's only one line drawn on it. What is going on? Why is there only one line? The line is coming from, is it Navrowski or was it Lagerbielke? I don't know which one.
It was one of them.
One of their shoulders, I think.
So yeah, the line is skimming the edge of his shoulder, right? And that same line is going through the middle of Marley Watkins' head. And it's all like whole shoulder, which you can score a goal with. You can score a goal with a shoulder. His whole shoulder and half of his head is past the line. And I'm like, is this the line for the attack? There's only one line. There's supposed to be 2 lines, first of all. So Marley Watkins is clearly beyond this line that they've drawn onto Navrowski's shoulder. And then there's no other line. And they're like, yeah, that's onside. Somebody want to explain that one to me? I don't get it. Like, this is somehow we've regressed our VAR and it's got worse.
You just have to. I just assume that somebody can draw a line properly, but it looked very tight. And I think even the commentators initially were like, "Oh, that's a goal." And it's like, hang on a minute, that looked very, very close to being offside. And then they backtracked to "Oh, this is a lot tighter than we realized." And it's like, no shit, Michael. Like, yeah, it was pretty tight, mate. Like, yeah, Sean, I take your point, but another thing that annoys me is they flash it up on the screen for like a millisecond and then take it off again because they know it probably doesn't stand up to any real scrutiny. Yep. So it's like, oh, there's the line. Oh, right, moving on. Yeah, that's all done with now. So yeah, I think the referee had a poor game. I mean, yeah, I think this is where Derek McInnes has probably played a blinder because all he's banged on about all week was, oh, we never got that penalty last year against Celtic, and we were hard done by. And those little things just filter through, and I think the referee's just been a wee bit sympathetic to Kilmarnock's cause. I am not for a second saying that we didn't deserve to get beat yesterday because we played rubbish. But you're right. The challenges on Greg Taylor, I mean, that should at least have been reviewed to VAR. Like, VAR should have look at it. How the boy that shoved Joe Hart didn't get a booking for that because that wasn't even
same guy.
Same guy.
Yeah, but like that wasn't even like a coming together. He deliberately ran up to him, like
targeted him.
And Joe Hart's going like, "What are you doing?" So for me, that, and then I may as well touch on the penalty now. The one we Haksabanovic. Now, the Women's World Cup, Australia got a pretty harsh penalty against them where the Australian defender sort of caught the heel of the Swedish player, and it was very, very fine margins. Penalty. And everyone in refereeing circles, oh, that's definitely a penalty. How is that any different with Haksabanovic? He catches the back of his leg and there's contact. He's going down, all right. But that, and then there was the arm. You look at the Rangers penalty that they got against Morton. Basically, it was like the lightest tug of the shirt you've ever seen in your life. Oh, that's a penalty. And that just reviewed by VAR. And then this one with Haksabanovic doesn't. So again, where's the consistency? If that is a penalty and the penalty that in the Women's World Cup was a penalty, then that one for Haksabanovic was a penalty as well. And I'm not saying we deserved it or would have scored it, but on the balance of fairness and everything, I think that should have been a penalty. And then, but the referee bottled it, and then VAR, I don't know but at that point VAR probably switched itself off and went, oh, we're not reviewing anything anymore. But I don't want to really harp on about any more than that, but I just kind of feel that was a couple of very questionable decisions. Particularly, like you say, when we picked up some very soft yellow cards, they seem to be getting away with murder.
So it's the biggest. What you mentioned, Paul, earlier about, and sorry, I keep circling back to this. It's just circling in my head, like the thing about being up for the fight, right? So it's stuff like when Armstrong bumps into Hart and Hart kind of gives him a bit, but then just gets on with the game. If Hart squares up to him and grabs him by the shirt, what's going to happen?
He's going to get booked or sent off.
They both get booked.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas Armstrong gets away with it and can go and elbow Greg Taylor in the head. Right? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, so something, I don't know, maybe there's something to that, right? Maybe the players should be eating those bookings to highlight so that the opposition get booked and can't keep doing what they're doing. Because you're right, like the Kilmarnock players were on just roughhouse on the edge of yellow cards the whole game and getting away with it. The Kilmarnock players were refereeing that game. And there's one bit that illustrated it for me. So there's Marley Watkins goes down injured. It's 1-0 at the time. I don't remember what minute it's in. And he sees that Yang is down injured in the other half. So he gets up, runs to the byline. I don't know if he's looking for treatment or just to get water. And then when Yang gets back up, Marley Watkins runs 10 yards onto the pitch, goes down again after having got himself up and gone off the pitch, comes back on, goes down. Referee gets him off the pitch. Cool. By the time Celtic take the throw in, Marley Watkins has just ran back onto the pitch without anyone telling him he can come on. You can watch this back and check it. Marley Watkins on the pitch, 3-4 seconds. Referee turns around, sees him, sees that he's come on the pitch, and then gives the signal for him to come on after he's seen Marley Watkins is on the pitch. That Alan Muir was not in charge of that game yesterday. Kilmarnock were. Derek McInnes refereed that game yesterday. And I'm pissed off about it.
I mean, there's obviously the usual time wasting. You know, everyone was falling over with cramp and wanting treatment and all. You know, you expect that, but again, yeah, all right. You say the referee's going to take a pretty strong sort of stance against it, but obviously by that point he'd given up or couldn't be bothered or whatever. But it's Scottish officialdom. I mean, this is just what we get, isn't it? Like it's just average and. And the thing is that we, in fairness, we do try and call this out when we've won as well. So like, we're not being bitter here or complaining. We made it very clear that Celtic were the architects of their own demise yesterday, well and truly. But it just adds insult to injury, I guess, when you get sort of decisions like that against you. But I guess
we did. Yeah. So I just said we did say we got one in the first game against Ross County when we all thought that was probably a penalty against your Hearts. So,
but then Aberdeen game last week we were calling it. Like should have had one last week.
What's going to happen in our transfer window, guys? Because I didn't like the look of that bench yesterday, and I know we're in a wee bit of a mire with injuries. So we've got no Carter Vickers, we've got no AJ. So there's two of your starting defenders. We've got no Hatate, so that's one of your starting midfielders. O's out, so he's your forward off the bench, so he's out at the moment. Tilio obviously hasn't even kicked the ball yet, so again we're down a winger there. So what do we do? How are we going to overcome this? Because are we going to dip into loans to maybe loan a striker for 6 months till O gets himself back up to speed? How are we going to tackle this? Because he, in fairness to Brendan Rodgers, all right, the team didn't play very well and I don't know, weren't playing the game plan or whatever you want to say, but it's very hard to change it when you haven't got anyone to bring on to change it because Hastabanovic flatters to deceive, I think. I think Yang's probably the one, not shining light, but he gave a lot of energy when he came on. He was trying to beat players. He was trying to be productive. And I think, maybe he's potentially played himself into a start, maybe next time out. But apart from that, who are we expecting on that bench to come on and make an impact? So what are we gonna do about it? What's going to happen in the next 10 days? Because obviously half of Celtic Twitter's in meltdown at the moment over the lack of signings, and it doesn't sound like there's not a lot of rumors or paper talk or anything saying we're imminently signing this player or that player. So what do you think?
Look, there has to be movement, right? I watched both or two of the post-match interviews with Rodgers, one on Celtic TV, one on Viaplay. They're much of a muchness, but he used the word not enough quality multiple times across the 2 interviews. Fair enough. He's needed time to look at what he's got, but there's a double-edged sword here that we are now out of one of the 3 domestic tournaments before we're in barely out of the middle of August. So we're sitting on a massive pot of cash. Debatable, I'm sure it's not 100 million, which I keep seeing on Twitter, but there's no shortage of cash in the bank. And we've talked about this, not us 3, not really panicking about it. There's a difference between not panicking and then you get a few injuries and you can barely field a team that, well, you can't field a team that can beat Kilmarnock away. So that's a worry. And Rodgers is making like the commentary from him comparative to when he was unveiled seems to be night and day. He was talking about, we want to progress in Europe. That's what I'm here to do. That made sense, right? He's done it all before domestically. Why come back if you don't want it? And yet we've seen nothing. Like, I think we can happily say now that we've got a bunch of injuries. We're miles off last season's team for personnel. We are definitely weaker right at this moment than we were last year by some distance. And part of that is injuries and part of that is players left. And the ones that have come in yet aren't ready-made 100% first team players. There's a few there that are probably that's achievable, but it's not like a Tati walked in on day one and you went, oh my god, he's a player. Like he's a player, then he's a first team player right from the off. None of them we've seen that. Navarowski looks like he's able to slot in for Starfelt, but he doesn't look to be as physically strong and a box defender like Starfelt was. He looks probably better on the ground, but without CCV next to him and a couple of ropey fullbacks, we've got issues. Like I'm sure that some of the players aren't too far away, but even if they're not too far away, they're not much fit, right? They've been injured for quite a few weeks. I think we need to go and spend a decent amount of cash on at least 2 first team ready players, goalkeeper, left back, and probably one other, but that potentially could be a loan, or one of those 2 could be a loan. I've got nothing to get. Like at the beginning of the window, I was like, well, let's not really do loans. But given where we are now and the way that medical room's looking, there's probably a case for a loan or 2. Now, if you can get a decent loan or 2 with options to buy, perfect. But if it has to be a loan just for the sake of it, it's a sticking plaster for 6 months till January or even 12 months. So be it. I don't think we can't leave the window without reinforcements in the door, and reinforcements that are better than some of the players we saw on the show last night.
Kieran Tierney or bust for me. But to be honest,
if we can get him,
whatever we need to do, mate. Like give him his image rights, whatever we did with Larson. But honestly, I don't even know where you go after that because there's just like all the middle market's just gone nuts at the moment with all the Saudi cash and with the English still doing what the English are doing, and there's just a lot more going around at the moment. So we're just that Fabian
give Saudi the 25 mil back, and we'll have Jota back.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we do that. Maybe they've only paid 5, and we just say, look, just scrub the rest, and we'll take him back. I don't know, but like we are just not in that Fabian Reeder market. We're in the Marco Telio market. We're in the Yang market, and it's
there needs to be a split, right? So they're talking about Reeder as a £15 million player. We spent 6 on Jota, 6 on CCV. I understand that 6 is quite a lot of cash for us per player, and it's still a gamble at that amount, right?
They were both loan signings as well.
Well, they were and look, that's ideal, right? Try before you buy, but we're now at this stage. As you said, the market has sort of moved a bit. 6 mil is going to be a gamble. 6 mil, like 1 mil's not a gamble. Well, 1 mil's just it's a lottery ticket. 1 mil's a lottery ticket. And with Hatate, it was
those 2 because we had them on loan. That's the thing, right?
Well, no, I agree, but at the minute, like not every team's going to want to lend you a player and give you an option to buy. Do you know what I mean? At the end of the day, that's the seller's prerogative if they're happy to do that. But we might have to take a 6 or 7 or 8 million quid punt, and it will be a punt. Like like I say, a £1 or £2 million player these days is a lottery ticket. And with Hatate, we won the lottery, right? We picked up him for £1 million, and he's been. You see every time he's not playing, you see how big a loss he is. But you get one of them every so often. You want to watch, as my old man used to say. I don't see that we can continue to be shopping at £1 and £2 million and hope that each one is even a fraction of the type of player that Hatate is. So, given there's money in the bank, given it's the last 10 days, we've got to go and spend some money. I assumed that what we were going to do anyway. I assumed that we'd done the easy part of our transfer business already, because that wasn't a hugely competitive market. We were shopping in markets that people, less people were using, more of a gamble. We'll take that risk, others won't. And then I figured that the bigger bucks were going to get spent now in the last 2 weeks of the window, where there's loads of moving parts. These type of players are going to be more in demand. They're going to have options. Let's be honest, we're probably not their first option. You look at a game pitch like that, who wants to play on that, 2 or 3 times a year? You don't. And there's another one in the league. So we're not going to be many players at that level's first pick. But if something else doesn't fall for them, maybe we get a player that we might otherwise not secure. But that's why it's going to go in my view, that's why it's going to go to the wire. And yeah, there's lots of complaints on Twitter going, if we've got money to spend, just go out and spend it and get a great player. It's not how it works, right?
we got CCV in the last day of the window.
And Jota. And Giakoumakis. All three of them came in the last day of the window.
But we forced the issue and said we want a loan to buy. And they were like, and they managed to get across the line. And I mean, imagine how different it would have been had that deal not gone through in the last day. So, I mean, I think you're right, Paul. I think these sort of players, higher demand, but then also English Premier League clubs are looking at their books going, we can do without X, Y, and Z. And then they might only become available in the last week of the window, because they've made the decision that actually we don't need these guys for the next 12 months. So let's put them out to loan and let's see who's interested. But we asked them the week before. We've asked them the week before. They wouldn't have said they were available. So I think you're right. I think there is a lot is hopefully going to happen in the last week. But I don't think that's necessarily Celtic's fault per se. I think that's just the market in general when you're going for that sort of, for one of a better term, English Premier League quality player, but just maybe on the fringes or needs a bit more development. But we definitely need bodies, and we need, like you say, they have to be first team ready, because we cannot afford to be going into Champions League football with the bench that we had yesterday. It's just, we're going to be, we're going to be a world of heart. It's a world of heart.
To think that we might go to a Champions League game with the same squad that we went to Kilmarnock with, it doesn't bear thinking about. So we've got to get bodies.
And the other problem you've got, Paul, as well, sorry to interrupt you again there, is that you talk about there was 8 players yesterday who were part of the treble winning team last season. But when Greg Taylor's below par and Callum McGregor, in fairness, has been below par, all of a sudden, you've no Hatate, no CCV, Jota's gone.
AJ's injured.
AJ's injured, Starfelt's left. So you say, all right, Narosti's, yet to be determined, but looks like he could be the partner to CCV. So you've maybe filled one of those holes. And all right, AJ will come back and CCV will come back and Hatate will come back. But at the moment, with Cal Mack and Greg Taylor being below par, half your teams, I'm going to say it's almost a new team, but a lot is resting on Kildare's shoulders at the moment. And for the love of God, if something happens to him, we are in so much trouble. It's not funny. And the way he's dropping deep and those centre halves are just scything him on the halfway line, one of those is going to connect. And I don't want to sound negative or pessimistic here, but we just do not have a replacement for him. He is our irreplaceable centre forward at the moment. And we desperately need another forward in the door just as some backup, just to take the pressure off him. If we are up 2-0, he's got to come off. He cannot be staying on there and playing 90 minutes. We've got to wrap him in cotton wool whenever we can. And yeah, that for me has become and that can be like maybe a 12-month loan or something just to cover the spot while O's recovering. But we need, I think we need 3 or 4 players, to be honest.
Well, yeah, like I think it's 2 or 3 first teamers like that you would want to buy and own, or at least loan to buy, and then maybe 1 or 2 loans. You're right. So it's between 3 and 5 probably, and you'd want some of them could be backup, like a backup striker, but you need at least 3 first teamers.
The problem is, so the loan ones we've had in the past, it's helped us. So like CCV, Jota, Odson Edward, all ones that were loaned to buy that were great success. We all paid 6 to 9 million for all of them. Then you have the other ones where you dodge the bullet, like Charlie Musonda, Ollie Burke, that sort of player. Timo Weah, I actually think would have been a good one if we'd gotten through the door, but that was that's the kind of market you want to get the loan to buy. But then you look at the other side of it, the players that we gambled on and signed, like Boyata and Cham, Frimpong, they were all ones that just did great. But I feel like that market's gone now. When you look at what Man City did this summer, they sold, was it 5 or 6 players for like collectively like 100 up to 100 million pounds or something. They had played less than 90 minutes of football between them. Carlos Borges went to Ajax, the one that we were linked with. He went to Ajax for 14 million euros, not played a first team game for Man City. So like 14 million euros. That's we're almost out, we're out of that Cham Frimpong market now.
You shared it. They spent 1 million quid on a 14-year-old boy.
Paul. Yeah.
Sorry, Paul. Yeah, but like we're just like another. And then you hear obviously the talk that Rocco Vata's probably going to be away, and he's playing with the reserves. I mean, like he could have been on the bench yesterday, but obviously they must know that he's imminently leaving. So Rodgers has went, well, getting a first team spot if you're not going to be here. But it's just it's incredibly frustrating. But with money like that getting thrown around, you can almost understand how and why.
Well, yeah, Hatate for the same money as a 14-year-old kid. It's just daft, isn't it? But that's what you're up against. But yeah, like look, I think it's naturally it's been a pretty downbeat pod, but Carlback actually said in his Celtic TV interview, this is a crossroads, 3rd game of the season, a crossroads. But I kind of take the point. If we go out next weekend, put out a performance and look at it, couldn't be a better fixture, right? St Johnstone are about as bad as it gets. So St Johnstone at home, if we don't, that could be a real confidence booster ahead of going to Ibrox the week after. We've got to go out and put a performance in there. Hopefully there's a body or 2 in the door before then. Maybe they don't play, but at least it just gives the place a lift and, some sight that there's things happening in the background. And look, the good news is, if it's good news, other people, I've seen other people talking about, do we prioritize a treble this year? Now, I still wanted the treble. I'm greedy. I said I was guessing on another podcast, I said, I'm greedy. I want to win a treble every year. Why not? Like, we got it sets the tone as well. The first trophy of the year, it sets the tone. But would you prefer to lose that or drop 3 points? I don't know.
I'd prefer to lose the cup. But here's I was thinking about it quite a lot, obviously, today. And the one positive that I managed to draw out of it, and I'm probably going to go on a rant again before we finish about something else. But the one positive I managed to draw out of it is if the Huns go through against Livingston, which I'm sure they will, because they always get a home draw in the cup, right? Then they're going to have a semi-final and potentially a final, which are weekend fixtures, which gives us a chance to put some points on the board and get a game or 2 in hand against them, ahead of them, which gives a psychological edge. That's the only thing I can think of. The only positive, really.
Well, the other positive is that they were absolutely rubbish against Morton. I mean, they rely on a dodgy penalty.
Yeah, but that's not positive from our loss.
Well, I know, but they're not exactly firing all thrusters either. Like you talk about gambles on £1 million players. Like out of all the players they've signed, maybe that. So it'll be. Time will tell, but when you're shopping in that market, not all those players are going to make it or make significant impacts. So they've got a lot of bodies there, but I don't think he knows he's best 11. So it's not like they've hit the ground running in the sense that like they're absolutely flying and we've got a mountain to climb at Ibrox. Yeah, it's never a hard game. It's always a hard game there, but I think I still much rather be us than them. And we've had one bad game, and like you say. A game against St Johnstone, ideal at home to turn it around and get back to playing a faster, And I think the thing for me I want to see this weekend coming is a faster start. We've got to start games better. That's probably been my biggest criticism of Rodgers' era so far, is that we are starting games way too slow, way too passive. So we've got to find a way to actually start a game and really, really dominate and get on the front foot right from the get-go and really impose ourselves, because it's taken us 20, 25 minutes to get any games. And that's, we shouldn't be in that situation as far as I'm concerned.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess while we're talking about the weekend, they've got to go to Dingwall before we even play. So that's not going to be an easy fixture for them up there. So we might have an opportunity to actually stretch our lead. So we're all doom and gloom after going out of the cup, but we could be staring down the barrel of an even bigger gap, or the opportunity to create a bigger gap, on the weekend. So that would really take the pressure off. That would take the pressure off going to Ibrox if that happened. We could potentially lose that game. Not that you expect or want to, but you could potentially lose that game and it would still be ahead. I
didn't get any suggestions on social media for this, but I did pick up on one potential cinch moment of the week. Even though it was the cup weekend, was the Morton manager heading over to the Sevco dugout to check replay on their iPad because he didn't have any technology in his own one. So that was quite interesting. Did you guys catch anything else? Any other candidates? Nothing.
Not this weekend. No, I literally caught the Celtic game, and that was it.
Yeah, quiet one. We'll circle back to the Celtic game then. So any final thoughts we've not covered yet before we do our man of the match around the boards, Paul?
No, look, it's a bit more than a bad day at the office. I think let's hope it was, like I said, that perfect storm. And, if there's one potential positive I can say out, it might give everybody a boot up the arse that you can't just rock up and expect to win games. And hopefully there's a decent amount of work on the training pitch this week, and they're bang up for it at the weekend and we go again. But yeah, not a huge amount more to say, to be honest.
Anthony?
Yeah, I think I've said everything that I want to say, to be honest. So it's a very, usually there's more, we always forget things. There's more to say when we get off air. I'm sure there probably will be when we get off. But no, like I said, I think we've covered it fairly well, and we've sort of addressed all the various issues. So yeah, no, I'm pretty satisfied that we've done our job tonight.
I've got one more thing to say, and that's that when you watch that game at Rugby Park at the weekend, this is what Scottish football is, and we love to make fun of it in a kind of a masochistic kind of way, but at the same time, this is a limiting factor on what we can achieve as a football club. You've got Sevco, Hearts and Hibs all coming out and pissing and moaning about not getting their fixtures postponed ahead of Europe. And they're like saying, well, PSV get it. Okay. PSV, if they get to the cup final, play 40 domestic games in a season. If we get to 2 cup finals, then we play 48. So where are you going to put those extra 8 fixtures? PSV have got a lot of free time in their calendar, so shut up. If Dutch football has also banned plastic pitches, whereas we positively encourage Kilmarnock to do whatever the hell they want with their surface. What was that? There was a picture going around of them with had a Henry the Hoover on the pitch, sucking up the
there's your cinch moment, John.
Yeah. The only reason I didn't chuck it out was because I wasn't even sure it was this week that it happened. Yeah. But yeah, that sort of, and then Aberdeen leaving the grass long, players rugby tackling Joe Hart and stuff like that. And this is what Scottish football is. And if we want to raise Scottish football, then we need to cut this crap out. We need to change from a 12 team to a 16 team. We need to stop teams playing anti-football. We need to get rid of plastic pitches. We need to reduce the domestic burden in terms of match fixtures. And as long as none of that changes, as long as we still have rules like, reasonable amount of tickets for away allocation, as long as we continue to act like the clowns, we're going to continue to be the clowns, and we're not going to be able to rise above this station. Rant over. Anyway, who's your man of the match at the weekend, Paul?
Slim pickings, wasn't it? Yang.
Oh, interesting.
Well,
Anthony?
Anyone that was on for any longer didn't cover themselves in glory, so I thought he actually showed a bit of a spark. he was unlucky not to get a goal, and pretty much every time he got the ball, something positive happened. So yeah, I'll give it to him.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say Yang as well, because I was ready to say Narovsky as an honourable mention, because I don't think he actually did anything wrong per se. But yeah, it was a really tough. Yeah, I'll say Yang, because he did give us that impetus for that last 20 minutes when he came on, or 25 minutes, whatever it was. So Yang, and hopefully just the start this week.
My choice is actually inspired by you, Paul. Not in the sense that. So obviously we talked about how Lagerbielke was just kind of yeeting the ball up the pitch, but I thought he was one of the players that had the most was more stuck for the physical battle than any other player in the pitch, and he was really resolute and he showed quite a lot in that his debut. So I was impressed with him in that sense, even though he clearly doesn't have the game plan in his head. So I gave Lagerbielke my vote for that. But yeah, Yang did look good when he came on, so I do agree with that in that sense. Cool. So 2-1, but as you said, slim pickings. Paul, any final thoughts? Any sign-offs?
Yeah, no actual music recommendation this week, because I'll be honest, I haven't been listening to anything new. I've been listening to some classic stuff. But I should have mentioned this last week actually, because a couple of musical legends passed away within, I think, about 24 hours of each other. Robbie Robertson of the band, who obviously started with Bob Dylan and then obviously went on to forge a really good career themselves. Did soundtracks and all sorts of other bits and pieces. He died on the 9th of August at 80 years old. And Rodriguez, who was the guy from the Searching for Sugarman doco, if you've seen that, Searching for Sugarman. He was a guy who basically went missing, really, and then he was he made it big in South Africa, and he had this whole Renaissance career. So he had 2 albums in the late 60s or early 70s. They did nothing at the time. He disappeared. Nobody knew who he was. And then South African radio started playing him, and he had this whole sort of boost. And then there's a documentary called Searching for Sugar Man, which, if you haven't seen it, that's probably my recommendation. Go check that out. But unfortunately, he passed away on the 8th of August. So the day between each of them, he was 81. So two classic kind of rock and roll stars from the 60s and 70s. So they're my little RIPs and Searching for Sugar Man. If you haven't seen that doc, go check it out.
I've not seen it, but I'm aware of it. So I might actually.
It's really good. It's one of those that I meant to watch for years and never quite got around to it. And I watched it a few years ago now, but it was long after it came out, and it's really good.
Anthony?
I've actually got an audio book recommendation. So Gunther Steiner, who's the team principal for Haas Formula One, released his book, Surviving to Drive. He narrates it himself. We listened to it driving down to Margaret River last weekend. Hilarious. Just his inner thoughts and just what he thinks of everything. It's a really, really fun listen. I don't think reading it would be quite the same. Actually, having him narrate it is actually a stroke of genius. So if you're into your Formula One, or you know who he is, or you've watched Drive to Survive on Netflix, you'll know who he is. He's the standout character, as it were. It's well worth a listen. It's quite insightful. It follows a year in Haas Formula One, which is never not eventful, basically.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good. I just finished reading the latest Irvine Welsh book, The Long Knives. I don't know if you guys are into Irvine Welsh. He's obviously got this really unique style of writing where he doesn't put the speech into speech marks or give new lines. It's just like runs like seamlessly into the narration, which I kind of enjoy, but it's an acquired taste in that sense. The Long Knives.
Is it a link to any, is it part of any of the other universities created? Is it any other characters?
It's in the same universe, but there's very little overlap with the other characters. There's like a couple of passing mentions, but it's kind of unique in that sense. Begbie does get a mention, and there's another one that I forget now. But yeah, they're just kind of mentioned in passing.
I'm a big fan of Welshie, so yeah, I'll check that out. Although my reading's been pretty poor of late. A couple of years ago, I got through about, I don't know, a ton of books in a year, across a year, maybe 30 books in a year, and I'm lucky if I get through 1 or 2 of these.
You're a married man now, Paul. You haven't got time for these things.
It's not that. I don't know what it is, but it's just I only really read books on holiday these days.
Yeah, it's a
it's on a
time issue,
holiday.
isn't it? Right, you need to get a bit of momentum with a book, particularly if you've got
Yep.
it out of the library. So yeah, it's an easy enough read as well, as long as you've got a strong stomach, as you can imagine from any Irving Welsh book. Apart from that, that's all. Can you please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, check us out on all these social networks plus Threads if you haven't already, and thanks again for listening. Take it easy all, and I'll see you next week. Hail, hail.
Hey, well.